Hi everyone. My name is Aviv. I was very excited to hear about this session about protest, direct action, and community economies. I have a lot of different thoughts about it, which I'm gonna just kind of briefly tell you about. The thoughts come from they come from several years where I was and still am in a certain way engaged with organizing protest and direct actions, and now more in neighborhoods, engaging with community economies, always through art projects. Originally, these were art projects that we did as a group that existed back then, a group that I was part of. That the group formed part of larger networks that organized protests, and we were kind of creating all sorts of different tools for protests. I won't go in too many details, but these are art-based tools for protests, and then kind of more for daily direct action that we were doing back in the day. And now also through art, I'm engaging with things happening in my neighborhood. These are always collective projects that are being done in group. But throughout years of doing this, I had a lot of thoughts about protest and direct action, which I'd like to share and maybe discuss. Maybe some of these are obvious. They're not academic thoughts. They're just thoughts of a person engaged in these things. The first thought that I've always thought, and which maybe this is one of these kind of more obvious thoughts, is that protest and direct action as the kind of ideal types of, I don't know how you'd want to call them, they're very different from each other. Protest, I see, and this is kind of reductionist or maybe essentialist way of talking about it, but I see protest as a way of, it's a kind of people getting together and communicating upwards. So it's you're acknowledging the powers that be, let's say, and you're saying they're not doing things as they should, and we're gonna collectively get together and show them that we want them to do things differently. So this, in some ways, and of course, actual protests have a lot of different dynamics going on in them, and this is by no way captures that. But there's something about protest which is kind of sort of like a complaint that acknowledges power, and some might say even reinforces power structures by saying, you have the power, the only power I have is to tell you that you should be doing things differently. Direct action, people talk about the direct action ethic. I think Murray Bookchin talked about this at some point. It's more about living the change you want to see in the world, that old kind of famous phrase. I see it as you want the world to be different than it is, and you say, I have the power right now to, even if it's on a small scale or even if it's like temporary, like a temporary autonomous zone, I have the power right now to create a kind of example of how it might be, and doing this in the here and now. So I see community economies as kind of like maybe a daily life interpretation of that, of the direct action ethic. So you're trying to create in the here and now what's happening, or what you'd like to see maybe happen in a large scale, but at the same time, even on whatever scale, it's already you're enjoying, you're finding the kind of pleasure and the benefit, you and your neighborhood, your collective, your village, your town, whoever you're doing this with. So it's a kind of it's an outlet. I see it into, because I'm always dealing with art. I see it as kind of a difference between creating images and creating maybe realities, more like solid realities. Like I connect it to a tradition of image making as opposed to a tradition of maybe object making. But that's maybe a different discussion, more about art. I have a lot more thoughts about it, but I don't want this to be longer than 5 minutes. So, looking forward to a very interesting conversation.